How much would you pay to relive your favorite memories? Quite a bit, I would imagine. Video games are one of the few memories we can actually go back and relive. It's all still there, waiting for you. But something strange happens when you go back. It's not quite the same, not because the game's changed, but because something else did. You can get close to the full experience, the clack of the GameCube controller, the PlayStation 2 boot-up screen, the hum of the TV, but that's going to cost you. And not just in the way that you think. That is the real price of nostalgia. On the surface, the cost has always been financial. Video games have always been expensive since their inception. First, demand was low, technology costs were high. You were paying $75 for Turok when it first released in 1997. That is $151 today adjusted for inflation. Video game prices calmed down some in the early to mid 2000s, with Game Boy Advance prices around $30 on average and Xbox game prices around $50. But prices have steadily gone up, along with the cost of everything else. The PS5 just saw a price increase on new consoles of $100 or more. And retro games? We have seen the price doubled since the beginning of COVID to now on average. If you want to get a hold of a game like Pokemon Emerald, you're paying around $250 just for the cartridge, and if you want it complete in box, you're paying over double that. Nostalgia can be bought, but if money was all it took, it would be easier than it actually is. For many people, there is a simple solution to avoid the price tag: emulation. It's now easier than ever to play games from your childhood and for the price of nothing. That price of nothing, though, has some consequences that I didn't really see before thinking about it more. If games are emulated, then there's less commitment, for me at least. If a game is instant access, then it's easy to drop it and scroll through my phone instead or watch a show. And sure, no commitment now can be a good thing. As adults, we have so many real commitments in our life that it is nice and sometimes necessary to be able to pick something up and drop it at a moment's notice. But to me and many others, there is something special about having the old hardware that we had as kids, of putting the disc in the console and pressing start on our favorite game. Sure, emulation has its perks, price and convenience being the main ones, but I will always gravitate back towards the physical experience I had as a kid. But why is that? Why do I try so hard to get the same experience that I had so long ago? And why does it never quite hit the mark? There's actually a reason for that. There is this idea in psychology called the fading effect bias. Normally, when we remember things, the bad parts fade a lot faster than the good. But strangely, nostalgia doesn't always work like that. When you revisit something you loved, the happiness can fade a little. And things like regret, longing, even loneliness start to creep in. Not enough to ruin the memory, but enough to change it. When I was in elementary school, I loved the Ratchet & Clank series. I got my hands on the first game and I was instantly hooked. The stupid humor, the cool weapons, the level design, it was like all of it was made just for me. Some sleepless nights and a few empty 2 liters of pop later and I had beaten the game. After I finished, it felt like there was a void in my little gamer heart. I needed more. Sure, I played through the game some more and messed around on some levels, tried to find more gold vaults, but I had an itch in my brain that only cheesy one-liners and fun and creative gunplay could scratch. And I thought I wouldn't get another experience like that again. I didn't really use the internet much when I was a young kid, so the majority of my gaming news came from the local trips to GameStop. And to my surprise, while I was browsing the PlayStation section, I saw a used copy of Ratchet & Clank going commando. I ran immediately to my dad and I told him, "You have to see this!" Of course, I didn't just want him to look at it, to admire the cover art, or read the game manual in detail. I didn't say it out loud, but my ulterior motives were clear. I wanted him to buy it for me. And he looked at me, then back at the game, and I heard the words no game-obsessed child wants to hear. "We can't afford it right now, bud." Okay, I didn't actually throw a tantrum or beg more. I was a pretty well-behaved kid, but my disappointment was clear, and we walked out of the store empty-handed. I went back home and I looked at my modest collection of games, and I wrestled with an idea in my head. I knew that you could trade in games at GameStop for in-store credit. I had done it once or twice before, and it got me some new games. I remember trading in my copy of Pokemon Coliseum for Pack and the Power of Juju. And yes, that memory physically hurts now. But I did it before, so why not do it again, right? That way, I would get a new game, and a couple collecting dust on my shelf can be played by someone else. Seemed like a fair trade to my young adolescent mind. So, I made the deal with the video game devil. I went back into GameStop with my precious games in hand, and I traded them in for the new Ratchet & Clank game. I'm sure this is a pretty common experience growing up as a kid whose parents didn't have a lot of money. And my dad didn't see games as a financial investment like they are seen by some now. Man, I wish I kept my collection of complete in-box Pokemon games, but hindsight is 20/20, right? So, I played Ratchet & Clank Going Commando, and eventually I traded it in for Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal. My game collection through the years stayed small, constantly trading in old games at a fraction of the price for new ones, and the cycle continued. I never realized as a kid I was trading in more than just games. I mean, how could I have? But looking back on it now, as I try to relive the memories I made growing up, I was trading in moments I didn't realize I wouldn't get back. Sure, I regret trading in most of my games, but it's kind of hard to blame a kid who wanted the new shiny thing and a father that just wanted to see his son happy. I've learned my lesson now, and now I have most of the games I played as a kid. Of course not all. I'm looking at you, Cubivore. Hell will freeze over before I shell out $600 to play that game again on original hardware. But I'm happy with my collection. I still boot up and play Ratchet & Clank every now and then, and man do I enjoy it. And I vow that I will never trade in another game again, especially to GameStop. But trading in games was only half of the picture in the early 2000s. What happened when I wasn't willing to let go of the games I just got yet, or wasn't sure about a game that just came out? That is where renting came in. For a few bucks, much cheaper than buying a game, you could have it, for a week that is. Then it was gone, like dust in the wind, only leaving your memories of the game to comfort you on your bored nights on the living room couch. Places like Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, and Family Video were there to get you hooked, even when you couldn't afford the whole thing. It was a weekly tradition for my family to go into one of these stores, pick out a movie or two to watch for the weekend, and for me to get a game to play. This was the highlight of my week. After a long week of school, I was ready to unwind with a new game that I had never played before. Of course, there was the occasional bad game that I rented, like the many licensed games that were awful. The first one that comes to mind is the Chronicles of Narnia game. God, that was awful. When I did get a good game, I never came close to beating it. I was bad at games as a kid and rarely got past the first few levels or areas, and I definitely never beat any of these games that I got at a rental place. But bragging rights didn't matter to me. I didn't care if I never got to the final boss of Metroid Prime. The Talon 4 starting area was good enough for me, and I explored and played to my heart's content. That is until the next Friday rolled around. Oh, Fridays. A beacon of hope and the harbinger of the end times. Well, the end of my times with those rented games, that is. As I was buying limited time, not ownership. Like Majora's Mask, I had a timer ticking down until the world ended, at least my gaming world. Minus the Angry Moon, of course. But that limited time with the game brought me real anxiety as a kid. I hated having to give up a game even if it meant I was getting a new one. I would put serious hours into my rented games, more than I would with a normal game I owned. That timer, that pressure, it made those games feel more important. They weren't better, but I knew they wouldn't last. The tradition continued for years, and I got to play all sorts of games that I never would have gotten the chance to, save for the rare sleepover at a friend's house. The tradition eventually faded, along with almost all of the rental stores that I would go to as a kid. Now we get Steam demos and Xbox Game Pass, which of course is well and good. It's great to have an abundance of games to play now and to give a try for free. But man, do I miss the days of the rental store. This ecosystem of trading, renting, and owning created a loop. You rented a game and loved it, so you bought it. Then found another game you liked, so you sold the first one, and the cycle continued. This cycle weirdly didn't make me feel detached from my games, but made me feel more connected to them. I spent hours picking and choosing, deliberating over what games to trade in and what to keep. I truly felt like I was making a sacrifice, which made me feel more attached to the games I played. Because once I traded in those games, they were gone. I rarely ever rebought games that I traded in, and that made the decision even more painful. Games were scarce back then, especially considering today's abundance. Now, I hop between games one after the other. With huge libraries and constant sales, they're easy to abandon and hard to get attached to. It has been a long time since I sat down and played a game to 100% completion, simply because I have so many options now that it doesn't seem worth my time to commit fully to a game like I did before. New games, especially indie games, have become cheaper and more accessible, but because of that, games as a whole, for me, have become more disposable. Because of my limited resources as a kid, I was much more intentional with what games I acquired. It was physical, something I held in my hand, not just a click on my screen. I remember the old games vividly, because of their scarcity, my financial limitations, and how I experienced them. The days of renting and trading in games are a largely bygone era. I'll look back on them with a warm reminiscence, and yes, we can largely relive those memories by shelling out a few bucks, but the price of nostalgia isn't just paid in dollars. Let me explain. Researchers at the University of Southampton did a study called Remembrance of Things Past: Temporal Change in the Affective Signature of Nostalgic Events. They wanted to understand how emotions tied to nostalgic memories changed over time, why these nostalgic memories feel bittersweet, and how these emotional patterns relate to psychological benefits like meaning, connection, and self-esteem. During the study, they found that nostalgia becomes more bittersweet over time. When events originally happen, they are mostly positive. But when we recall them later, some of those positive feelings can fade and negative emotions can increase, like regret and loneliness. This is the opposite of what usually happens with memory. As I mentioned before, the fading effect bias is when negative emotions fade faster than positive ones. Nostalgia is an exception. Why is it bittersweet though? The study identifies specific emotional drivers: regret, loneliness, and gratitude. So nostalgia isn't just a sad happiness. It's a mix of loss, reflection, and appreciation. Nostalgia is remembering something that was good while realizing that it is gone. This tension creates a bittersweetness, but also meaning and psychological value. Nostalgia can increase our sense of connectedness and identity. So when we revisit a memory, we are changing it through nostalgia. We rewrite it, turning joy into something heavier. When I first played Ratchet & Clank, it was simple, pure enjoyment, and no awareness of loss or melancholy. When I replay it now, it feels different. Something is missing. I'm more aware of what's gone. I lose some of that original joy and I gain that feeling of longing, the awareness of the passage of time. That's the cost I'm talking about. I can't recreate the original experience, the sense of wonder or childhood freedom. Yeah, I can try and buy back what I physically had, but I can't buy back that feeling that no longer exists. Nostalgia is a good thing. It creates meaning, connection, and identity. But as we chase down that feeling, we realize nostalgia doesn't take us back. It reminds us that we can't go back. If this brought back a memory for you, whether it was renting games for the weekend or trading in something you regret, I would love to hear about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. This has been Safe State by SavePoint Sage.